My dad shouted at me, "You'll always be second to your sister?" I smiled and said, "Then let her cover your mortgage. I'm done." An hour later, his voice was trembling. "Wait, you were the one paying? Son, let's talk about this. There are moments in life that just shatter you. 1 minute, you're the dutiful son, the one holding everything together. The next, a single sentence from your own father makes you realize you were never even a real person to him. Just a living, breathing ATM for your sister. My name's Callum. I'm 28 now. And for most of my life, I was the backup plan. Not the golden child, not the favorite, just the afterthought. The guy who showed up on time, kept his mouth shut, and picked up the pieces when no one else would. That was me. To really understand how things got so twisted, you need a glimpse into my family. We weren't exactly rich, but we weren't poor either. My dad, Mark, worked construction his whole life. A hard worker, for sure, but totally old school. Stiff upper lip, men don't cry, that whole thing. My mom left when I was 12. No big dramatic fight, just quiet. She packed her bags while my sister and I were at school, left a note on the fridge, and just vanished. My sister, Liv, was 14 then, and ever since, Dad treated her like she was made of glass. This beautiful, fragile thing that needed constant protection. I think he blamed himself for Mom leaving, and in his mind, Liv suffered the most. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my sister. I really do. But growing up with her, it was like living next to the sun. Bright, overwhelming, always the center of attention. Everything she did was special. Her school art project, framed over the fireplace. My science fair trophy, probably still gathering dust in some forgotten box. She dated a guy in high school who broke her heart, and Dad practically drove to his house to have a word. Me, I got jumped behind the gym in 10th grade. Came home with a split lip, and Dad told me to toughen up. Still, I didn't complain. I wasn't that guy. I just focused on school, got a scholarship, worked part-time, and moved out the second I could afford to. I didn't go far, just across the city, and I visited regularly. I didn't hold a grudge. Not then, because deep down I kept thinking maybe one day he'll see me. Really see me. Not just the son who did okay, but the man who stood on his own 2 feet, who worked hard and made something of himself. But that day never came. Or maybe it did, just not in the way I'd imagined. See, after college, I landed a solid job in IT consulting. I'm not saying I was a prodigy, but I was smart with my money. I learned early on that no one was coming to rescue me. So I became my own safety net. By 25, I had a steady income, a decent apartment, and some modest investments. A year later, I bought a duplex, one side for me, the other rented out. I kept climbing quietly without making a big fuss. And then I started helping Dad out. It began small. His roof needed repairs. I had some savings. He protested, of course, but I told him I'd rather help now than later. Then came the plumbing, then a new car battery, then groceries when he was tight one winter. Eventually, I just started paying part of his mortgage. He never asked directly, but I could see the stress etched on his face. So I offered, and every month, like clockwork, I sent him a chunk of my paycheck. He never said thank you, not in so many words. But I figured that was just him, not big on emotions. The thing is, Liv never helped financially. Not once. She lived with Dad well into her 20s, bounced between jobs, went back to school for something she never finished, and now she's a content creator, which apparently means posting product reviews and yoga poses online. Dad called it her business. She called herself an entrepreneur. I kept my mouth shut. It wasn't my place, I told myself. And maybe I believed that for a while. But things started shifting about 6 months ago. Liv finally moved out, but not into her own place. Nope, into a fancy high-rise apartment that a friend was subletting while traveling. She threw a housewarming party and invited everyone except me. Said it was a girls-only thing, but then posted pictures with a bunch of guys there. Whatever. I let it slide. Again. Then Dad started making comments. Little ones, barely noticeable at first. Like when I mentioned my job was stressful and he'd say, "Well, you're not the only one who works. You know, your sister's got 3 brand deals this month." Or when I visited after a long week and he'd say, "Liv dropped by yesterday. She brought cookies. Said she's thinking of starting her own baking line." I'd nod, smile, pretend like that wasn't the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. But it got worse. One night a few weeks ago, I stopped by after work. I was tired, starving, and just wanted to check in. Liv was already there, sprawled out on the couch like she owned the place, scrolling through her phone. Dad was in the kitchen, frying something that smelled vaguely burnt. I said, "Hey." No one responded. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to break the weird tension. Dad grunted. "Liv's thinking of starting a podcast," he said, like it was some monumental achievement. "Cool," I said. "What's it about?" "Life, family, wellness, stuff like that." Liv didn't even look up. You wouldn't get it. I bit my tongue. We sat down to eat, and halfway through, Dad turned to me and said, "You know, your sister's really making something of herself. I'm proud of her." I waited. Nothing else came. Just that. No acknowledgement that I'd helped keep the lights on in this very house. No nod to the years of quiet support. Just Liv. Always Liv. Then came the straw that snapped it all. Last Sunday, we were all at Dad's for dinner. A rare event. I brought over some steaks, thinking I'd treat them both. Liv showed up an hour late, wearing ridiculous designer sunglasses indoors, saying she was detoxing from screen light. I don't know. I grilled, made conversation, tried to keep things light. But the whole time, Dad kept interrupting me to ask Liv about her social media numbers, her latest collab, or whatever other nonsense she was spouting. Finally, I cracked. I was talking about a project at work. Nothing fancy, just something I was proud of, and Dad cut me off mid-sentence. "Liv, you ever think about launching your own skincare line? I bet people would eat that up." I put down my fork. "Dad, I was talking." He didn't even look at me. "Yeah, but this is important." Something inside me just shifted. "Of course it is." I said, quieter now. "It always is when it's about her." That's when he turned. Actually looked me in the eyes. "Don't start, Callum. You know she's had it harder than you." I stared at him. "How exactly?" "She lost her mother. We both did." He shook his head like I didn't get it. "She's always been more sensitive. She needs more support. And I guess I'm just the utility bill?" That's when he snapped. "You'll always come second to your sister. That's just how it is." He said it like it was a fact. Like gravity. Like death. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just smiled, stood up, and said quietly, "Then let her pay your mortgage. I'm done." His face didn't register what I meant at first. But Liv looked up, eyes wide. An hour later, after I'd gone home and ignored 5 missed calls, my phone buzzed again. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I picked up. Dad's voice on the other end was different. Shaky. Small. "Wait, you were the one paying? Son, let's talk about this." I didn't answer right away because for the first time in my life, he sounded like a man who finally realized what he'd taken for granted. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive that. I didn't call him back that night. I didn't text. I didn't respond to the 3 more voicemails that came in before midnight. The last one suspiciously slurred, like he cracked open that bottle of whiskey he usually saved for special occasions. I just sat on the edge of my bed in the half-dark, phone buzzing beside me, my heart pounding in this weird mix of rage, disbelief, and something that felt a lot like grief. Not the grief of losing someone. No, it was the grief of realizing they were never really who you thought they were in the first place. It's strange, isn't it? How a single sentence can flip your whole world upside down. You'll always come second to your sister. Just 11 words, but they hit like a freight train. Not because I didn't already know. Deep down, I think I always did. But because he finally said out loud. No pretense. No excuses. No room for me to pretend otherwise. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, the words echoing like they were scratched into the walls. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to be the silent son anymore. No more monthly transfers. No more quiet visits bearing groceries or gifts. No more free tech support for Liv's online brand. I was done. If they wanted to treat me like an afterthought, they could feel what life was like without me filling the cracks, without me keeping the lights on, literally and figuratively. I blocked Dad's number for a week. Petty, maybe, but I needed space. And in that space, something happened that surprised me. I started to feel lighter. The weight I'd carried for years, of obligation, of trying to earn love that should have been freely given, it began to lift. I went to work, came home, cooked for myself, watched terrible sitcoms, and for once, didn't feel guilty for just being. But peace of my family never lasts. It started again with a knock on my door. I live in a duplex, remember? The rental side had just been vacated. The tenants had moved out early, breaking the lease, but I didn't mind. They were decent people who communicated, and I figured I'd take my time finding the next renters. Maybe even renovate a bit. I hadn't told anyone yet. Definitely not Liv. So, when I opened the door one Thursday afternoon, I was working from home, and found her standing there with a stack of boxes in her arms and sunglasses perched on her head, I just froze. "Oh, good, you're here," she said, breezing past me like she owned the place. I blinked. "Liv, what are you doing?" She walked in, dropped the boxes on my kitchen counter, and exhaled dramatically. "Dad said I could stay in the empty unit while I figure some stuff out. The building, downtown, my sublet, yeah, they need it back early. Some legal drama. I don't know. I didn't read the whole email. Anyway, this works out perfect." I just stared at her. "Dad said you could stay here?" "Yeah," she said like it was obvious. "He told me you own the place. I mean, I knew that, but he also said you'd be fine with it. Said you're always the responsible one." She smiled. That sweet, oblivious smile that had probably gotten her out 100 jams. "Liv," I said slowly, "this isn't a guest room. It's a rental. I haven't offered it to anyone yet. And more importantly, you didn't ask me." "Oh, come on," she scoffed. "It's not like I'm some stranger. I'm your sister. You can't let me be homeless. I just need a few weeks, maybe a month, 2 tops." I felt my jaw clench. "You're not homeless. You have friends. You have Dad's house." At that, her smile faded. She looked at me like I just kicked a puppy. It's not the same. That house is falling apart. The AC doesn't even work." I crossed my arms. "Yeah, because I stopped paying for it." She blinked. "Wait, you paid for the AC?" "I paid for everything, Liv. The roof, the utilities, half the mortgage for 3 years." She laughed like it was the dumbest thing she'd ever heard. "Why? He never even told me that." "Because he never wanted you to see what he expected me to do for free." I snapped. "Because he knew if you realized, it might actually cost you something." Silence stretched between us. And then, with a pout, she said, "Well, that's between you and Dad. It has nothing to do with me. Doesn't it?" I asked. "You waltz in here like you own the place. Don't ask for permission. Expect everything to be handed to you. And think that somehow doesn't connect." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." That was rich coming from her. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her out. But I did pick up her boxes, walk them back to the door, and say, "You're not moving in. Not now. Not ever. Find somewhere else." She left in a huff, muttering something about me being selfish. I locked the door behind her. That night, the text came from Dad. "You had one chance to do the right thing by your sister. One. I hope you're proud of yourself." No, hi. No, thanks for keeping us afloat for years. Just pure weaponized guilt. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. But of course, they weren't done. 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. Someone, claiming to be me, had inquired about refinancing the duplex. The account rep flagged it as suspicious because "You usually come in personally, Mr. Turner." I was stunned. I went down in person, filed a report, locked everything down tighter than a drum. And, yeah, you guessed it, the inquiry came from my dad's home IP. I didn't confront him. I didn't yell. I just sat with that fact like it was a scab I couldn't stop picking. He was trying to leverage me. For what? For Liv. It all made sense then. The praise. The sudden interest in my property. Letting Liv believe she could move in. He never saw my home as mine. He saw it as a backup plan for her. I thought that was a low point. It wasn't. The low point came the following weekend. I was grabbing lunch with my friend Dion, the kind of guy who tells it to you straight and has zero time for drama. We were catching up when he paused mid-bite and said, "Hey, isn't that your sister?" I turned. Sure enough, there she was, Liv, sitting on the patio of some bougie cafe, being filmed by some guy with a DSLR camera. She had a microphone clipped to her dress and was holding a coffee like it was a perfume bottle, slow motion, swirling it while she smiled into the camera. Dion raised an eyebrow. What's she doing? I already knew. This was her wellness influencer act. Fine, harmless enough. But then I noticed something. Behind her, set up for display, was a printed banner. One that read, "Turner Properties Presents, Urban Retreats by Liv. Coming soon." I stood up, walked over. Calm, quiet, but boiling inside. She saw me and immediately faked a smile. "Oh, hey, you want to be in the video?" "What is this?" I asked, pointing at the banner. She looked at her cameraman. Can we cut? Then she turned back to me, that same sugary voice. It's just a promo thing. I'm launching a wellness retreat. Pop-ups, local experiences. I figured the duplex could be the first location. I blinked. The one you're not allowed to live in? Oh, come on, she groaned. It's branding. I'm just using the space for photos. Dad said you'd understand. Did he also say I'd cover liability when someone sues you for slipping on the porch? You're being so negative, Callum. Seriously, that was it. That was when I realized there was no bottom, no limit, no line they wouldn't cross if they thought it benefited her. I left, didn't say another word. But that night, I sat down, opened my laptop, and began drafting a document I never thought I'd need. A formal cease and desist notice, addressed to my own sister. I wasn't bluffing, and they had no idea what was coming next. I didn't send the cease and desist right away. That night, I stared at it for hours. Just sat there at my desk, rereading it over and over again. The language was clean, professional, not personal. Legal enough to be taken seriously, but not so cold that it felt like I was nuking the bridge beyond repair. But even as I hovered over the send button, my hand shook. Because this wasn't just a letter. It was a line in the sand. Up until that point, I'd always held out hope that things could be mended. That somehow, after enough years, enough sacrifice, enough second chances, my dad would finally see me for who I was. Not the backup son, not the walking wallet, but a person, a man, his equal. But that letter was the moment I finally accepted the truth. He was never going to change. So I hit send. The fallout was instant. The next morning, my phone exploded. Texts, voicemails, even a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be my dad calling from his buddy's phone, because I blocked him again. The messages all followed the same theme. How dare I threaten my own family? How ungrateful I was after all he'd done for me. How Liv was just trying to build something, and I was tearing it down out of spite. Spite, that word hit differently, because for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't being spiteful. I was being free. But of course, my family didn't see it that way. I tried to go on like normal. I really did. I threw myself into work, said yes to every freelance offer I'd been putting off, and even booked a weekend hiking trip by myself. Something I hadn't done in years. But something in me had cracked. That thing I'd been holding together for so long. The image of family, of duty, of being the bigger person. It had shattered. And in its place, just silence. For weeks, I didn't hear from them. Not Dad. Not Liv, not even a distant cousin who used to send memes to the family group chat. It was like I'd been scrubbed from existence. And honestly, that part stung more than I expected. Because even if the attention had always been lopsided, it was still attention. Still something. Now I had nothing. And that was rock bottom. I'd never felt so alone. Not even when I was a kid, hearing my mom's suitcase zip shut behind a closed door. Not even in college. Eating dry ramen for the third night in a row, while pretending my scholarships covered everything. No, this was different. This was a loneliness of choice, of walking away from people who were supposed to love you, and realizing they never really did. Not unconditionally, at least. I stopped going to my regular grocery store. Didn't want to risk running into my dad. I ignored mutual friends who asked, "Hey, is everything okay with your family?" I even turned down a promotion at work because I couldn't focus long enough to fake enthusiasm during the meetings. I was spiraling and I knew it. And then something strange happened. One night, about a month after I sent the letter, I came home and found an envelope taped to my door. No name, just the words, "Thought you should see this." Inside was a printed screenshot of Liv's Instagram story from the day before. She'd posted a video of herself at some retreat. Not mine, thankfully. Talking about her journey as a wellness entrepreneur. That wasn't new, but the caption below caught my eye. So grateful to my amazing dad and business partner for making this dream possible. Couldn't have done it without your financial support. Hashtag family first, hashtag blessed business partner. I stood in my doorway for a solid 10 minutes, that paper fluttering in my hand as the implications sank in. She was using him, not just emotionally, not just for validation, financially. And he was letting her. All those months, maybe years, that he'd told me he was struggling, that Liv was finding her footing, that there wasn't enough to go around. And meanwhile, she was using him like an ATM. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat on my back patio, and just let all burn. Not physically, of course, But in my head, I lit the whole house down. All the lies, all the expectations, all the guilt I'd carried for years. I pictured it all going up in smoke. And by the time the sun rose, I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. It was time to rebuild. The first thing I did was cut every last financial tie to my father. I mean everything. I called the bank and confirmed I was no longer a co-signer on his emergency line of credit, a temporary favor from 2 years ago that I'd completely forgotten about. I removed my access from the joint utility account, another holdover from the time I was paying bills on his behalf. I even had a lawyer draft a formal notice of property boundaries to be filed with the city just in case someone got cute with business permits again. Next, I focused on me. I revamped my consulting website, something I'd put off for months. Hired a designer to clean it up, added testimonials from past clients, and leaned hard into my niche, small business infrastructure. Within 3 weeks, I had 5 new clients. By week 5, I was booked solid for 2 months. I doubled my rates. No one blinked. With the extra income, I started renovations on the rental unit. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted to. I replaced the floors, updated the kitchen, installed smart thermostats, and even built a little outdoor patio space. Not for guests, for me, because for once, I wanted to make something that I enjoyed, not something to impress my dad or earn a sliver of his approval. And you know what? It felt good. Better than good. It felt like mine. But rebuilding isn't just about money. It's about worth. And that part, that took time. I started therapy. Yeah, the guy who toughened up through everything finally sat on a couch and talked. Turns out carrying your family's emotional baggage for 20 years does things to a person. I learned about enmeshment, about conditional love, about the way I'd spent my entire adult life trying to earn scraps of affection by overperforming. And then I stopped doing that. I stopped fixing people's laptops as a favor. Stopped answering late-night texts that read, "Hey bro, quick question about Wi-Fi." I stopped showing up out of guilt. And slowly, I started showing up for myself. I reconnected with old friends, took weekends off, went on a few awkward dates, even joined a local book club, mostly older women and retired teachers, but they had great wine and better stories. The more I invested in myself, the more I realized how small my old life had been, how much I'd shrunk to fit inside the role my family had carved out for me, and how I didn't have to live there anymore. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. About 3 months after the cease and desist, I got a call from my Uncle Pete, my dad's older brother. We hadn't talked in years, mostly because Pete lived 3 states away and kept out of family drama. But he'd heard things, and he had questions. "You really stopped paying for the house?" "Yep. And Liv tried to move into your rental without asking you?" He whistled. "Damn, that's cold." I waited, expecting a lecture, but instead he laughed. "About time someone said no to your dad." He said, "You know he called me last month asking for a loan?" I blinked. "Seriously?" Didn't say what for. Just said it was urgent and that Callum's being difficult. He paused. I told him to sell his car if he was that desperate. "Has he?" I thought of Dad's pristine '68 Mustang, the one he never let me drive. Not even once. Doubt it. Pete chuckled. "Figures." That call stayed with me, not because of the Mustang, but because for the first time I realized the cracks weren't just visible to me. Other people were starting to see them, too. And those cracks, they were about to split wide open, because what I didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that Liv's so-called business. It was a house of cards, and it was about come crashing down. It started with a ping. Late one night, I was sitting at my desk, invoices done, tea in hand. One of those chill evenings where the world feels finally, blessedly quiet. I was browsing LinkedIn of all places, responding to a request from a client who wanted a testimonial blurb featured on his company's page. And that's when I saw it, right there under people you may know. Olivia Turner, founder and CEO at Urban Retreats by Liv. That wasn't the shocking part. What was shocking was what came next. Her tagline read, "Building a wellness empire through holistic experiences and short-term property investments. First location fully operational, expansion underway, open to partnerships. Short-term property investments, first location." I clicked through, pulse racing. There, right in her experience section, she'd listed the duplex. My duplex transformed a rundown rental into a high-end wellness retreat for creators, entrepreneurs, and influencers focused on mindfulness, self-discovery, and curated brand collaborations. Host over 40 paying guests and 12 client-sponsored events. I stared at the screen for a full minute, mouth dry. 40 guests. Sponsored events. She was monetizing my property, or at the very least claiming to, and parading it around as her success story. The photos she posted, polished, branded, glowing with soft lighting and pastel cushions. My patio. My renovated kitchen. The same damn patio set I'd built with my own 2 hands last summer, now rebranded as her Zen garden. But that wasn't all. There was a link at the bottom, press features. I clicked. 2 online articles popped up. Nothing major, local lifestyle blogs, influencer fluff. But both featured her as a rising entrepreneur, and both explicitly stated that her family supported her venture by co-signing the property in her name. Let me say that again. Co-signed. In her name. I felt like I was choking. This was no longer about family drama. This was theft, fraud, public misrepresentation of my property, my money, my efforts. And it lit something in me I hadn't felt in a long time. That cold, focused fire clarity. Revenge isn't just rage. Not the good kind. Anyway, real revenge, the kind that changes everything, comes from patience, precision, planning. And I was done being the quiet son in the corner. It was time they saw what I looked like when I stopped holding back. Phase 1. Information gathering. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Sam, an old college friend turned property attorney, who'd helped me with some lease contract in the past. I explained the situation, keeping my voice even, just facts. He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "You have documentation proving ownership, all of it?" I said, "The deed, renovation permits, receipts, everything." "And you never authorized her to operate a business from your unit?" "Never. She wasn't even allowed to live there." "Okay," he said. "Then you got leverage. Real leverage." We met that Friday. He brought a paralegal. We reviewed the screenshots, cross-referenced public statements, even pulled property photos from her press features and overlaid them with my renovation invoices. It was airtight. "She's not just lying," Sam said. "She potentially opened herself and your father, if he's listed on anything, up to liability." That caught my attention. "How so?" "If she's hosted paid guests in a residence not zoned for that kind of activity, and something goes wrong, slip, injury, anything, you could be on the hook. Unless, of course, we draw a very public line between you and her." A public line. I like the sound of that. Phase 2, the quiet strike. Before I could make any moves, I needed to know how deep the hole went. So I started poking around. I created a fake account. Nothing sketchy, just a clean burner email with a vague username, and messaged her business profile asking about retreat availability. The reply came back within hours. "Hi, love. Thanks for reaching out. We're currently booking for the September Creator Detox Weekend. 3 nights, yoga, guided journaling, brand vision board sessions, all meals included, $549 per person. Spots limited to 8 guests. 8 guests. In a 2-bedroom duplex unit, even with a fold-out futon. That was absurd. I replied, asking for photos of the space. She sent the same ones from the article, complete with fake branding and a logo watermark. But here's where it got wild. At the bottom of her message, she included a document link for payment and waiver forms. I clicked. The waiver form was a mess, legally void, probably stolen from a template site. But the payment link? That led to her personal Venmo. Not a business account. Not a payment processor. Just Liv's name with little sparkles around it, and the emoji woman in lotus position as the profile pic. She wasn't just unprofessional. She was reckless. I saved everything. Screenshot it. Backed it up. Sent it to Sam. "You want to scare her," he said, "or bury her?" "Neither," I said. "I want to expose her. But not yet, because something told me, some whisper in the back of my head, that this rabbit hole went deeper. And I wasn't wrong. Phase 3. The paper trail. The next few weeks, I kept my distance. Didn't message her. Didn't show up to family functions. Didn't respond to the one awkward voicemail from Dad saying, "Hey, Liv mentioned you've been, upset. Maybe we can talk soon." Instead, I watched and waited. I checked property listings. I set up alerts. And sure enough, one day it happened. A zoning complaint. Filed anonymously, but marked on city records. Suspected illegal use of residential property for commercial lodging. Guess whose address it was? Mine. But here's the kicker. I hadn't filed it. Someone else had. I showed it to Sam. His eyebrows lifted. Looks like a neighbor beat you to it. Think it'll stick? It's a start, he said. Let's add to the pile. Phase 4. The trigger. Now I knew Liv. I knew she was bold, cocky, and careless. But I also knew she couldn't resist the spotlight. So I gave her one. I reached out through the burner and offered to feature her retreat on a new wellness blog I was starting. She took the bait instantly. Within 2 days, she'd sent a media kit bios, even a brand story about how she and her father worked tirelessly to invest in a broken-down property and turn it into a community oasis. I almost laughed. Almost. But I had everything I needed. I built a fake landing page, clean, professional, with just enough fake reviews to look legit, and published her interview, complete with her own words, inflated guest numbers, and a direct quote about investing our family money into the business. Then I emailed the article, anonymously of course, to 3 local small business newsletters, 2 zoning offices, and 1 lifestyle blogger with a reputation for sniffing out influencer scams. I didn't include a single lie, just her words and her consequences. The dominoes were lined up now. All it would take was a little push. And Liv, God bless her, gave it to me. She posted a celebration story to Instagram a few days later, champagne glass in hand, laughing with 2 friends on the porch of my duplex. The caption, "When you realize you're too powerful to be stopped." Clinking glasses. I read it, smiled, and opened my inbox, because that morning I'd received something beautiful, a cease and desist letter addressed to her. Not from me this time, but from the City Office of Residential Compliance. Apparently, someone had traced her retreat ad to an unlicensed commercial activity on a residential zone. My zone. In the city, they didn't play games. They gave her 2 options: pay a fine and cease operations immediately, or escalate it to court and risk higher penalties. Either way, the lie was collapsing, and all I had to do was sit back and wait. But I wasn't done yet, because revenge isn't just about watching someone fall. It's about making sure they know why. The letter must have hit her like a freight train. 3 days after the city's cease and desist went out, Liv's Instagram went dark. No news stories, no filtered photos of avocado toast or candid yoga poses in front of my patio garden. Her last post, a wide shot of a brunch table with the caption, "Always building," was suddenly flooded with comments. "Didn't you lie about owning the property? Wait, weren't you just fine by the city? I knew this retreat was sketchy, girl. This is someone else's house." Her replies were either deleted or replaced with a single emoji. That was Liv, all right. When backed into a corner, play it cool. Pretend it's all noise. But she hadn't just been exposed. She'd been documented. And her own arrogance had handed me the perfect follow-through. I wasn't interested in dragging her through court or suing her for money. Truth be told, I didn't care if she scraped by or landed a brand deal next week. I didn't want her broke. I wanted her irrelevant. I wanted the world she built on lies, the curated identity, the fake empire, the unearned spotlight, to collapse under the weight of its own fiction. So I went quiet. I didn't gloat, didn't reach out. I just watched as the tide turned. First came the apology post, a classic influencer move. Black background, white cursive font, soft language. I'm taking a break from social media to reflect and realign with my purpose. I've made mistakes and I'm learning. Please respect my journey. No mention of me. No ownership of the lies. But that was fine. Her silence spoke louder than any caption. But the real fallout didn't happen online. It happened at home. 2 weeks after her disappearance from the internet, I got a knock at my door. I almost didn't answer it. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe instinct, made me open it. It was Dad. But not the dad I'd known. Not the man who barked orders or stormed around the house shouting about loyalty and pride. This version looked deflated. Hair messier. Shirt wrinkled. A man who'd finally realized his throne was made of sand. He stood there for a long moment before speaking. "Hey, Cal." I crossed my arms. "Surprised you're here." "I deserve that," he said. Silence stretched. Then, almost reluctantly, he added, "I heard about the cease and desist. City called the house." I said nothing. He looked down at the porch. "You know, when your mom left, I didn't know what to do. Liv cried every night. She barely ate. And you? Well, you just got quiet." I kept my expression flat. "So, you decided to make it up to her by forgetting I existed?" His eyes flinched. "No, that's not." He caught himself. "That's not what I meant to do. But it's what you did." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, It is. That alone shocked me. The man who used to argue over burnt toast was finally admitting fault. I kept thinking, he continued, if I could just protect her, keep her happy, then maybe I could undo what happened. I thought if I gave her everything, she wouldn't feel broken. And what about me? His voice cracked. I thought you didn't need anything. You were always the strong one. Quiet, smart. I figured you'd be fine. I exhaled, a cold laugh escaping my throat. You know what's funny? That's exactly how people justify neglect. He didn't argue, didn't offer excuses. He just stood there, swallowing his pride like it tasted like vinegar. I came to say, I'm sorry, he said, for everything. I stared at him. For once, I let the silence speak. Then I asked, what happened with Liv? He sighed. She's back at the house, moping, complaining, blaming cancel culture. That sounded about right. Her sponsors dropped her. Someone posted screenshots of her waiver forms, said she'd been charging people for retreats without proper licensing. One girl even hinted she might sue. Is she? No, I don't think she can afford a lawyer. A beat passed. Then Dad said something I never thought I'd hear. She asked me to co-sign a loan to help her start over. Said she needed to rebrand. Said her reputation took a hit, but she's still a visionary. I snorted. Did you do it? He looked at me with the tired eyes of a man who'd finally realized he'd been digging his own grave for years. I said no. Now that surprised me. I told her if she wanted to build something, she'd have to do it on her own. No handouts, no shortcuts. He paused, and then she screamed at me, said I was just like you. I raised an eyebrow. That's new. She meant it as an insult, he added, voice low. But it was the first time I took it as a compliment. We stood there for a while, father and son, on opposite sides of a door that had stayed closed too long. Finally, he asked, can I come in? I thought about it, then shook my head. Not yet. He didn't argue, didn't look offended. He just nodded, stepped back, and said, fair enough, I'll wait. As he walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt clean, like I'd rinsed off years of guilt and finally walked out from under a storm I didn't realize I'd been standing in. 3 months later, I rented the duplex unit out to a young couple starting their first business, a local artist and her partner, a therapist. They were kind, professional, paid on time. They painted the back fence and planted herbs in the little garden Liv once used as a backdrop. They didn't rebrand it. They just lived in it. And that was enough. 6 months later, I gave a talk at a small tech conference about pivoting careers and building healthy boundaries. A former client introduced me as the guy who saved our company and never asked for credit. It wasn't a big event, maybe 30 people. But afterward, 2 of them came up and asked to hire me. One of them is now a retainer client paying me more monthly than I used to make in a whole quarter. And Liv, well, her influencer career never recovered. She tried starting a podcast. It lasted 2 episodes. Tried rebranding as a life coach. No traction. Her last attempt was a GoFundMe campaign titled Support a Female Entrepreneur Rebuilding After Hate. It raised $48. From what I hear, she moved back in with Dad, still chasing something, still posting filtered selfies like nothing happened. And Dad, he sends me texts sometimes. Short ones. Just, hope you're good. Or, saw a Mustang on the road today. Thought of you. I don't always reply, but I don't delete them either, because some wounds scar over and some just stay open. But either way, I've learned how to walk without limping. The last time I drove past Dad's house, I noticed something. The porch light was off. Not broken, just off. The yard was quiet. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to go knock. I already had my own home, my own light, and I'd finally learned that no matter how loud the world gets, there's something powerful about being able to close your own door and choose peace.